Taoiseach, we're all aware that the wholesale price of gas has just rocketed 4.5% this week, and with the fear, of course, that Russia won't reopen the Nord Stream pipeline, we know that the price is only going to go one way. Now, given that about 50% of our electricity is generated from gas-fired power stations, that means that for everybody, the price of electricity is just escalating. The issue of the impact on householders has already been raised here this morning, and I fully support that. But what I want to raise with you this morning is the impact on small retailers, especially small independent retailers. They are not at the moment and will not be able to pay their electricity bills. Now, I've spoken to many of them, and they're genuinely concerned that they won't be able to continue trading. And Taoiseach, I believe, honestly I believe, this is not a case of somebody crying wolf. When retailers tell you that 18 months ago they were paying 12 cents per unit and that they are now paying almost 30 cents, we see they just can't take that hit. One said to me, politicians don't realise how much at risk small retailers are. And they were including me in that comment as well. Another spoke of the frightening time that they're facing. And you and I know that it's not just electricity costs that have escalated, packaging, wages, and they're not complaining about that, but they have to bear those costs. And the problem is that whatever working capital or contingency they have, they've eaten into it. Many are at the end of that rope, as the cost of doing business has just, as one of them said to me, it's just gone out the door. And many smaller stores are now trading at below break-even. So these are resilient people. They've survived, and they want to acknowledge the assistance that they got from the government during COVID. But they do need temporary support. They need some stability so that they can plan for at least the next 6 months and talk to their banks. Some of the proposals they have is some kind of price freeze, or some on electricity, or a rebate system when energy costs as a percentage of turnover increases over predetermined thresholds. And a recognition, Taoiseach, that many energy providers are making huge profits, and government needs to look at some intervention here. A temporary suspension of commercial rates would help. They're short-term measures, they have long-term proposals as well, but I would like to hear, Taoiseach, if you can give them any respite this morning for the serious few months that lie ahead.
Deputy Harkin.
Thanks. Thanks, Deputy. I just want to say at the outset that I, as Minister for Enterprise and the Government, understand that businesses have endured some really difficult years. Brexit, the restrictions related to the pandemic, and now, of course, inflation, particularly when it comes to energy costs. And I think it's fair to say that this government hasn't been found wanting when it's come to helping businesses get through difficult periods, whether it was the wage subsidy scheme to help businesses to keep their staff on, whether it was the CRSS helping with overheads, the new SCARP arrangement that allows businesses to restructure if they become emburdened by debts and survive, the reduction in VAT, for example, for the hospitality sector. And while a lot of businesses are struggling, I think it is fair to point out that most are doing well. And that is evidenced by the fact that there's 2.5 million people at work in Ireland now, more than 2/3 of whom work for small businesses in the SME sector. We see the tax receipts coming in from VAT and company profits, and there have been very few insolvencies in the last year or two, although I do think that is likely to rise. And while every business is different, and some have very high energy bills, the average business spends between 5 or 10% of their outgoings in energy costs. And we are working on some schemes that may be helpful for business. I don't want to raise expectations too high. We're not going to be able to step in and pay the electricity bills or the gas bills of every business across the country, or even many businesses across the country. But under the EU temporary state aid framework, we have submitted proposals for a Ukraine crisis or inflation crisis related loan scheme for business, which would be similar to what's in place for Brexit and COVID at the moment, and also potentially a grant scheme for businesses that face viability issues as a consequence of energy prices, but that would be restricted under the terms of state aid to those that are in manufacturing and exporting and would not apply to retail. One of the areas where we're already helping, and I think can help more, is in helping businesses to reduce the amount of energy they use and make energy savings. And I looked at this the other day, and there are actually 20 different schemes that businesses can apply for to get help from government to carry out an energy audit and then also get capital grants to help them to install things like solar panels, insulation, microgeneration, all of those things. And I think that's actually really important, because it might be the case that we're not just facing or experiencing an energy price shock. This could be an energy price shift. And while energy prices might fall back, they might remain at a high level permanently. And the best response to that is a long-term one, and that is reducing the amount of energy we use and increasing the amount of renewables and microgeneration that we do. And I think that's one area where government has 20 schemes already to help business. I want them to become more aware of those schemes, and I also want to improve them as well.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Harkin.
Thank you, Taoiseach. And I did say that they certainly acknowledged the support of government during COVID. That was made very clear to me. Now, you said most businesses are doing well. I'm not so sure that's the case. I think a lot of businesses are on the brink. As I said, they're running out of working capital. They're running out of contingency. And while that may not be apparent in the figures right now, Minister, it is actually happening on the ground. Now, you spoke about the fact that for most businesses, the cost of electricity is 5 to 10%. But for an independent food retailer, electricity cost is the second highest after wages. So for that sector, they are hit so much harder by an increase in those costs. And you talked about long-term schemes, and they're there. But Taoiseach, when your back is to the wall, when you have no working capital, a long-term scheme, good and all as it may be, is not as attractive as it might sound in better times. So
Thank you, Deputy.
Short-term measures need to be looked at now.
Taoiseach, to conclude.
It may well be that you're right. You know, it's often the case that you experience things on the ground and anecdotally, and it's weeks or months later before the official statistics prove what you knew already. And I think that's what we're seeing now with the inflation statistics. Prices, according to the CSO, are rising at 9.6% a year. I think everyone knew that weeks and months ago. In fact, it feels to me like they're actually rising faster than that. And I expect that we'll see inflation go above 10% before it falls back, and it will fall back. In relation to businesses, I take your point in relation to working capital. And we've helped over 10,000 businesses already through loan guarantees. But at the moment, the only businesses who can qualify for that are those that can demonstrate that they've been adversely affected by Brexit or by COVID. And what we've applied to the European Commission for permission to do now is to extend those working capital loan schemes to businesses that can demonstrate that they've been adversely affected by Ukraine, i.e. energy prices, and that's the first step. And we've made a submission to the Commission to do that. And we'll have to legislate to do that as well, by the way, but that's one of the things I definitely intend to do. And then I'm looking at other things that might help as well, particularly around the longer term response, which I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Taoiseach.